environmental planning is necessary to achieve overall growth of economy and to remove socio-economic disparities. Discuss. It could be a 15-mark question or 20-mark question. आप लिखेंगे 2-2.5 पेज में, you must write this down. The challenge I see on 3 fronts. Number 1 is, you'll have a challenge in how to structure the answer. किसके बाद हम क्या लिखें? The second problem will be how to relate this with geography. And the third is, examples आप भूल जाएंगे लिखना. My experience tells me most people forget to map a discussion to case studies and examples. Give me an example where lack of environmental planning resulted in economic limitations. An example where lack of environmental planning has resulted in disparities. So aapko likhna hai. You must write that. Achha, by the way, one big doubt students have, sir, case studies kaise likha jata hai? Case studies essentially are examples. Examples which are detailed in maybe aapke case mein 4 or 5 lines. If it is an essay of 10 pages or 20 page का write-up है, उसमें case study बनेगा 2 पेज का या case study बनेगा 1 पेज का, पर आपका पूरा आंसर ही 2 पेज का है ना. So for you the case study will be 2, 3, 4 lines with some detail. जैसे कि, for example, climate change creates heavy rainfalls and flash floods in urban areas. Example, Bangalore, correct? अब देखो, case study will not have the word Bangalore alone. Case study will be a bit more of detail. So in Bangalore, constructions and blockages of storm water drains, in particular, disruptions of natural hydrological flows and blockage of natural lakes like Belandur Lake resulted in water logging of parts of Bangalore. ये आपका बना case study, which probably impacted, if you have data, it impacted maybe X amount of people, it resulted in Y amount of economic loss. So an example, अगर आप सिर्फ Bangalore लिख दोगे, it lacks the punch. So you must write specifics. So specific was Bangalore, stormwater drains, bad construction, Belandur Lake, South Bangalore, North Bangalore, and so on. Actually, it's unfortunate. Bangalore is a highland area. Na? Highland में पानी टिकना नहीं चाहिए. In highland areas, water must run away. But because you have blocked the drains, constructions, Bangalore, a city of lakes, and they have blocked the water flow systems. So when the lake overflows, you'll end up having floods. To describe that is called as case study. So case study of how overgrazing results in soil loss. Plateau of Mato Grosso in Brazil, livestock ranching, Californian dust bowl, Western US, overgrazing because of ranches. जब 2-3 line लिख दिया, it now becomes a case study. Wrong irrigation, wrong choice of crops. Example, Aral Sea region, Central Asia, Uzbekistan, inland drainage region, saline water used for cotton cultivation and therefore salinization and shrinking of the lakes. ये बना आपका case study. So I realize this, that all of you talk about case study, but case होता कैसे आपको नहीं पता है, वो दिखने में कैसा है. So your answers, खासकर environment वाले, or any answers which has an applied dimension, must necessarily bring in some case study. So case study of forest management. उठाओ फिर a region, Haryana, Aravalis, we have the area called as Manged forest. That area has some kind of joint forest management. That becomes your case study. So your case studies have to come from your current affairs as much as possible. So abhi hum wahan ghuse nahi hai. Once I enter those topics of paper 2, I'll let you know what they look like. But whatever you can from examples must be part of discussions on environment. So 3 things I told you. These kind of questions may, one challenge will be how to structure the answer. Second challenge will be how do you link with geographical terms. And third challenge will be remember to bring examples, in particular, at least one case study. You must make your answer somewhere relevant to current events. Yes, Gautam. फिर हिवरे बारे बाजार मॉडल लिख के छोड़ मत दो. 2-3 lines more. Maharashtra, Ahmednagar, Popatlal Pawar, Anna Hazare, okay, Ralegaon Siddhi model, okay, water management, cottage industries. दो तीन word add करेंगे Gautam. Then you have got the answer. Don't just mention one word. Say water pollution or land degradation. Don't just say more water. Example Punjab. So Punjab, Bhatinda, Rajasthan, Ganganagar district, okay, or Faridkot district, and then say fertilizers increase usage under Green Revolution, particularly after 1960s, resulted in high soil friability, resulted in eutrophication of water bodies. Okay, so when you add 3-4 lines on it, that becomes a case study. Basically, this is the analogy approach जो हम essays में use करते हैं. ये answers short answers हैं, tight answers हैं, ठीक है? So bring the example बीच में. The answers are not narratives. जहां पर आपको word का limitation नहीं है, वहां पर शुरू कर सकते हो with example. I hope you got the idea of what I mean case study. अच्छा, now let's get back on the question. Yes, absolutely. So Miyawaki method जो है, ये कहाँ use हुआ है? इंडिया में कहाँ use किया जा रहा है? So you must mention the districts. I think Khammam district में use किया गया था, तेलंगाना में. Khammam district, बिहार में भी use किया है, but in बिहार में they have used the SRI technology, system of rice intensification. So if you make it specific, then you get the answer. Then you get a case study. Yes, you're right. Miyawaki technique also used in urban agriculture. Correct. You're right. Because water sensitive systems. So ये question try करते हैं. Let's see. Environment planning is necessary to achieve overall economic growth and also address social inequalities. So economic growth and social inequality. To address this, we need environmental planning. Kaise? Let's see what points you can have first. How does environment planning help in economic growth? And how does environment planning help in removing social inequalities? What are those examples where, or some events where environment planning nahi hua, it has resulted in compromising economic growth? इसके लिए क्या है? You must first know what is environmental planning. Then I will match it. Environment planning का क्या-क्या components हैं? Components is resource identification. Environmental planning is deciding on processes for resource extraction. Environmental planning includes waste management. Environmental planning includes study of social and ecological impact. Environmental planning includes local participation. Environmental planning is also about anticipating disasters and disaster mitigation associated with environmental activity. What's environmental planning? It includes resource identification. It includes deciding on the process of resource extraction. Think of mining, think of deforestation, think of construction. हमें क्या process use करना है? It includes waste management. Every human activity will have waste. So how do you manage waste? Waste management and waste disposals. It includes social and ecological impact study. It includes local participation. It includes anticipating disasters and disaster mitigation associated with environmental activities. It also includes use of technology and associated consequences. It also includes distributing and sharing of the outcomes. यही तो है आपका what we mean by welfare approach. Yes? Now, इसमें से बताओ which are directly related to economic growth and which are directly related to inequalities. So resource identification, economic growth हुआ, process extraction, economic growth हुआ, waste management is also economic because pollution can impact. This has an element of social issues, local participation and social issues, anticipate disaster. ये economic भी है और ये social aspect भी है. Technology will impact economy and social aspects here, and this is directly social aspects. So if you don't start with what is environmental planning, you'll be lost, right? Now from this list, can you divide now that without planning, resource identification is poor. We'll end up having lot of wastage. Without environmental planning, it will not be wise choices in terms of extraction process or in terms of technology use. Without environmental planning, you'll always have an issue of waste management. And the waste management can create environmental problems. Without this, disasters. And they can impact economic growth and sustainability. अब बताओ इसमें examples आपके पास हैं? Talking about that project of Western Ghats. Lavasa Chardham project. Okay, you're talking about, yes, we had the fire in that dump. Okay, Bangalore mein bhi hua hai. We have had Ghazipur also. We have had, yes, oil spills, yes. Wind tower demolition ko. Oh, you're talking about the Supertech one. Oh, I went back to World Trade Tower 9/11. There are better examples. Now see, so a बहुत important aspect है. Now let's look at this. Now इसका discussion चला जाए एक तरफ चला जाएगा that environmental issues and economic gains का बहुत important factor है site choices. कि कौन से location में आप करेंगे. Road तो बनाना है. Where do I make the road? I must make a dam. Where do I make the dam? I must have mining. कहाँ mining करेंगे? So this is a factor. If you don't have proper planning, you might end up construction in the wrong areas. You might end up disrupting the vulnerable regions. ये बहुत important हो जाता है hill area constructions में. It's very, very important in coastal construction. Lot of urban hazards, urban flash floods, urban fire, urban gas leaks जो हैं, because somewhere we compromised on the environmental planning. So one paragraph on these lines. सब में examples मत देना, but 2-3 में दे देना या 1-2 में दे देना, which means 1 or 2 incidences you should study a bit more detailed. I think landslides of Himalayas are a good example that you are constructing dams, you're having road constructions without proper environmental planning. Like roads constructions hai, bridges construction hai, flash floods in the upper streams of rivers hai. So one discussion done here. Now come to other part. How does bad planning result in inequalities? Because of bad planning, the social impacts are ignored. Because of bad planning, the local populations, they get displaced. Have you heard about the Saharia population of the Kuno National Park? Kuno National Park, MP, okay, near Shivpuri, there are local tribes. Some of them are Bhils and a very vulnerable tribal group called as Saharias. H-A-S-A-H-A-R-I-Y-A, Saharias. They have been displaced. So uska bhi consequence hai. So any displacement, we call these populations as project affected families. Dam as projects, national parks as projects. Narmada ko chhod do because it has now been discredited. Medha Patkar has been taken apart. So Ken Betwa ka displacement hua hai. So pick up some example here. Yes. So local population displacement can increase inequalities. Lack of environmental planning in urban areas can result in unauthorized constructions. It can result in more and more development of slums and ghettos. Ye bhi inequalities hai. Lack of environmental planning can result in agriculture impacts. Think of Green Revolution, a program that lacked environmental planning, correct? So aapko dekho, see, a very important wisdom for all of you is, aap kuch bhi kar lo na, your answers can never be comprehensive. Matlab, your answers can't have everything. Aapko 2 page diya gaya likhne ke liye. So you must have the wisdom to pick up what's more important with examples. How environmental planning affects slums. Arey, agar aapne land use planning nahi kiya hai, you will have more and more people living in unauthorized areas. Okay, Yamuna floodplains, correct? Yamuna push jo bolte hain. So if you have a proper environmental planning, a proper land use planning, a proper scheme of who will use what land, yes. So lack of environmental planning, inequalities such as in Green Revolution, lack of environmental planning can result in water problems. The biggest challenge is drinking water access, and that can include or it can aggravate problems of inequalities. That's all.